Welcome to the Trial Time Podcast. I'm Adam Parker here with co-host Jim Parkman. Jim, we have a very special guest today, Secretary of State from Missouri, son of John Ashcroft, Jay Ashcroft.
Yeah. You know, he's making his way on his own now. You know that.
Well, I threw in John Ashcroft because you're older, Jim, so you'll know who that is.
Kind of between us. We've got the son, which is you, and the daddy, which is me, right? But Jay is on his own. I mean, he's taken off, let me tell you.
Well, Jay, I'll just get started by asking you the question. We know you're the Secretary of State of Missouri. You've been in politics for a while. Do you feel having your father, did that help you get started with the positions he's held?
I think it did. Having someone that governed as a politician, I hate to say it, or as I would say more as a public servant than a politician, and someone that knew that elected officials weren't trusted and wanted to be someone that whether you agreed with him or not, you could trust him and would be a person of integrity and would endeavor to do the right thing, whether or not it was politically expedient. Having that sort of brand that I could follow along with was definitely helpful. And it was impressed upon me at a young age by him that the best politics is good governance. And we need more of that in this country.
I definitely agree wholeheartedly. And he was very well respected as a U.S. Attorney General. And you yourself were an attorney. Did you learn a lot on how to be an attorney from him?
I probably learned some from him, but it was just part of growing up. So to me, my dad was an attorney. My mother was an attorney, still are, obviously. My older sister's an attorney. So I grew up in a household where we debated things of importance at the dinner table. So I was used to that. Maybe because of that, when I went to school, I went to engineering school and actually have a couple of degrees in engineering because I said at the time I wanted to get a real job and not be an attorney.
With you being an engineer, I was actually a math major, and most people say, hey, I'm an attorney because I hated mathematics. Engineering, similar field. Did you come across that as well? Was your family shocked when you said you were going to get an engineering degree?
No, it was long known that I was the kid that loved word problems in math class. I was forbidden from taking things apart at my house without asking permission because I would take them apart, put them about 80% of the way back together and say, oh, I figured that out and go on to something else. And my mother got a little tired of that. So no, I think from a young age, I just kind of had that engineering bent. I prefer to look at my shoes and look at people when I'm talking to them. People figured I was engineering material.
Jay.
Either way.
What's interesting is, once you left law school, did you go right into private practice or did you go somewhere else first and then come back to that? Or how did that work?
I started law school while I was teaching. I was a professor of mechanical engineering and engineering technology at the community college in St. Louis. Okay. When I graduated from law school, then I actually started practicing law right out of law school and did that for, graduated in 2008 and then became Secretary of State, sworn in January of 17.
Okay. So you practiced for a while. Did you do just general practice or were you more like into this election law that you do or stuff like that?
Originally, I was doing IP work, patent prep and prosecution. 2008, though, was not a good year to come out of law school. So
market crash.
The market did crash. And I came close, actually, to going back into engineering. Was actually looking at another engineering job because of the market. And my father had started a law firm with several U.S. attorneys from around the country, about 6 or 7 of them. And he offered me a job. And I said that I would do it as long as he just paid me what I would have gotten from the engineering job I was looking at. Because I hadn't been an attorney and I liked the idea of working with my dad, but also sometimes I love my family, but sometimes after they've stayed at my house for 3 or 4 days, I'm ready for them to leave before they come back.
You know they're gonna hear this, don't you?
I do. Look, I think my parents are at the spot where they love it when I come to visit, and after 2 days, they want me to leave and just leave the grandkids with them.
Yeah. What about, so we've gotten kind of into private practice a little bit. When was it that you decided I want to get into politics? Okay.
I was irritated watching TV, and I guess a little bit before that, I was invited to a political fundraiser just because I knew a lot of people in that environment. I still was involved in politics in that I would walk a parade for other people or knock doors for them, but I wasn't crazy enough to run myself. That's what other crazy people do. And I went to an event, and they were just trying to get Republicans to run for positions in St. Louis and St. Louis County, because there tend to be more Democrats there than Republicans. And like frankly, any thinking person, when they asked me, I said no, and I left the meeting. I said, I'm getting out of here. Mm-hmm. And then kind of watching TV, seeing what was going on in the world, and looking at who was running and who they had supported in the past, I was griping about it. My wife very politely said, look, either put up or shut up. And on the last day of filing, we filed to run for a state Senate seat in St. Louis County, I don't know, a +7 to +10 Democrat district. But I just felt like there ought to be someone with kind of my political beliefs that was running, ran well in the primary, won that primary, and then held the eventual winner, unfortunately, the Democrat, to 50.1% of the vote. But that's really where it started off. Was I just I was kind of yelling at the TV and complaining, and my wife politely said, put up or shut up.
So your wife had the vision. And
I think she would say she never thought it would turn out like this.
Shut up, right? And not do anything else.
She just didn't want me just sitting in my lazy boy watching the news and complaining. So she's like, well, hey, do something about it. The funny thing that my wife likes to recount is when I told my parents, my mother, as you would expect mothers, she just gushed about how I was needed and politics needed me, and I was, perfect and what all. And then she says, can I talk to your wife? So I handed the phone to my wife, and then she says, are you nuts? What are you doing letting your husband get into politics? But it's been a wonderful thing. My wife has been incredibly supportive.
We told us about your wife and your mother. So tell me about what your daddy said.
Dad was happy. Dad was very supportive, very happy to give advice, has always been a great person, especially when it comes to politics, to talk about the issues of the day and what's going on, and have you seen this before, and what's your advice? Although I have to say, I'd say in the last 3 or 4 years, it's been a little bit harder to talk to Dad, because I called Dad up and he says, I've never seen anything like this. I'm sorry. This is beyond his, he was a state auditor. He was state attorney general. He was governor. He was U.S. senator. He was U.S. attorney general. So you kind of think he's done it all. Nope. And he started saying, look, I've never seen anything like this in politics. I'll help you. But this is uncharted territory. But it's been great to have him.
One more question. I'll turn it over to Adam. But here's the question. Where do you want to go from here?
What I have loved about public service is the ability to be consequential, is the ability to make a difference in the lives of people of this state, and make a difference that allows them to more fully be the best that they can be.
Yeah.
I want to continue to be able to do that as long as the people of the state will allow me to. I have no desire to go to Washington, D.C. I had the not to go work full time. I do have to visit occasionally. I had the opportunity to run for the U.S. Senate, and my heart's in Missouri. I love Missouri. I love the people of Missouri. I visit every county in the state every year. But as long as the people of the state will allow me to be in public service, that's what I want to continue to be, what I want to continue to do. as long as I remember that it's a gift of the people. You never truly earn it. It's bestowed by the people, the right to serve in public service.
Well, let me say that. I told you I was going to be quiet. I'm not. I'm going to say this.
He
okay?
never is. He never
And
is.
I mean this. I mean this. Your ideology of wanting to help people now and what a mess we're in this country. Please don't forego. Please don't forego the thought of maybe going, to Congress or maybe going even beyond that. Sometimes we need people like you in this country, okay? And we need people to step up nationally, not just to help Missouri out. Sorry, Missouri, sorry, but I think they would agree with me too, that if you're able to help them, maybe you're able to help the rest of this country. So don't let that go, okay? Keep it in the back of your mind.
Will do.
And remember, I said it.
Hey, you are doing a great job serving the people of Missouri and actually setting an example for some of the other states with some of the stuff you've done with voter ID laws and all that. But I did want to bring up one thing that we hit on a second ago. Your dad said, never seen anything like this. What's going on with politics?
Yeah.
And Jim was interviewed on Hannity the other day, talking about all the classified information being found. Recent years, they found stuff with Hillary Clinton. They found stuff with Trump after he left office. They found stuff with Biden from when he was a senator and vice president. Let's see. I think who was it? Pence came forward the other day saying he had something.
Yeah.
We're gonna find something in John Ashcroft's garage later.
No, we're not. Because if he had stuff, my mom would have cleaned out that garage a long time ago. So we won't. But I do think, it brings up a good idea, and I know that there's a congressman from Missouri that I think is looking at this, and some other people. Yeah. There ought to be a part of, I don't know if it's archives or GAO or someone that is their responsibility when an individual is leaving office that might have had access to classified documents. There should be a schedule and a process for them to go through the papers and make sure that doesn't happen.
Right.
That's just common sense. And why there isn't one, I assume, is only because it's the federal government and it doesn't comport with common sense.
Hey, Jim, he came up with a good solution. He should have been on Sean Hannity the other day instead of you.
You're right. There has to be somebody there. I don't think people are doing this just to keep it and just to say, hey, I got it. I'm doing it intentionally. I think you're right. I think you got to have a Walmart person to check you out. Okay. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's really a precaution. And I think you've hit the nail on the head. So maybe Congress will do something.
Jay, we started doing this about a month or two ago. We've been fortunate to have some great guests so far. We've had some actors, athletes. You're our first politician. We've had a few attorneys, and with the more celebrity people, we kind of ask them to talk about some trials and tribulations they faced in life and how they overcame them. And with attorneys, we always ask if they can share like a courtroom story from when they were practicing, like a trial story. So I want to ask you both those, but first, did you have any trial stories from when you were in private practice?
I was not a trial attorney. Mm-hmm. The biggest case that I actually got to help out with, and I'm limited about what I can say about it.
Sure.
I was part of a mediation between a little company you've probably never heard of called SpaceX and United Launch Alliance and the Air Force. And it was, I will just say that it was publicly reported as about an $11 billion lawsuit. And it had to do with contracts from the United States Air Force for rocket launches. And for an engineer like myself, I'm a techie, to be able to be involved in a mediation dealing with cutting edge technology that would be on those rockets and then the rockets themselves. And then to be something that was so high stakes. I mean, I wish we hadn't been a fixed fee. I wish we would have had a percentage of it, but we didn't.
Oh yeah.
It was just, that was probably one of the most fun things I've ever been a part of, is finding a way to get to a solution between two companies when a massive amount of money was at risk for each of them, and being able to push them to find a way to move forward. And I really am happy that in that situation, I didn't get to make the decision. It was those two companies that we were able to mold them to a position where they could say, hey, we can agree on this. Let's move forward like this.
Jim and I were talking earlier about the kind of cases we like, and Jim is a guy that's big into white collar, likes the complex, the corporate fraud. When a CEO is being charged, it represented Richard Scrushy in Health South years ago when it was the largest corporate fraud ever. And I like personal injury stuff. I like contingency fee cases. I like talking to people about how they're hurt, but I think it is cool that you as a tech guy could actually handle one of those huge cases, one of the biggest ones around.
Oh, yeah. It wasn't just me.
Yeah, but I mean, you're involved in it. It's the kind of case you like, because
Right.
if I tell Jim, I'm like, hey Jim, we've got this client that was electrocuted in a bucket truck, Jim's gonna be like, boring. So I do get excited when attorneys get to practice with cases that's in their wheelhouse they like, even if it is 5-10 lawyers involved with them or even more.
Yep.
Especially engineering stuff, that with rockets and stuff like that. That's got to be just fascinating. I mean, it's beyond cutting edge, as you said.
It was a real thrill. It was a lot of fun. And then, when you kind of talk about, hard personal times, I have my second son was 1.25 pounds when he was born. Normal pregnancy is 40 weeks, although I think they say 38 to 40 they consider normal, but full term would be 40 weeks. He tried to be born at 20 weeks, and he was born at 25 weeks. And that was a difficult time because my wife was in the hospital for 5 weeks, and every day the doctors would come in and say, and they were polite about it, they'd say, there's nothing we can do for your child. Your child's going to die in the next 24 hours. There's nothing we can do.
Oh, no.
And
No.
it was, but at the same time, it was such a difficult situation that it was easier for me because I'm an engineer and I have this real problem, and some other men have this problem. My wife is telling me about difficulties or things she's running into, and instead of just listening, I'm like outlining, well, this is how you fix that. This is how you fix that. She's like, would you just listen to me? I'm like, oh yeah, sorry. So it was helpful that it was just entirely something that there was nothing I could do. And it really helped me to just put it before God and to pray and kind of get through my thick skull that I can't do this. This is something where God's in charge and he's going to act, and whatever he does is good. And I need to rely on him instead of myself.
Yeah, that's tough to do sometimes because I'm just like you. I like to be in control, and I've got that scientific, okay, let's analyze the problem, let's come up with a solution. But sometimes we do have to let go and let God, as they say, and just pray.
My wife would say I have this common male problem where I think all of my ideas are good.
Yeah. My wife would say I have that problem, and Jim would also say I have that problem.
But I do think, it's a common theme that we hear among people. And I think it's a great common theme. And that is sometimes you've got to put your faith in God, and you have got to let him steer the course and let him kind of help you through these problems and difficulties. And it's a common theme, and the theme generally turns out to be a very good ending. And that's what's so great. So I'm glad they're doing, I guess mama, child doing great now.
They're doing well. We have 4. Although my mother does say that that's the son I deserve. I'm not entirely sure what she means by that, but she may think that I was a handful when I was a kid.
Yeah, maybe we need to talk to her, But I think that's great. And, I know you've just blessed in your life. I can tell you that right now. You really have. You've got a great family, a great reputation, a great family name. If Missouri doesn't want you anymore, okay, if they stop wanting you, Alabama does. So
I appreciate that.
Tell them that. If they want to divorce you, we'll marry you.
Yeah. We've actually got a little bit of time left. I know we try to keep them short, and I know you've got other things to do for the people of Missouri. But before I ask our final question, we ask everyone, I want to ask, Could you tell us what's going on as far as if anything's going on in election law, what you guys are doing in in Missouri?
We're looking at some things. We passed a major election law last year. We went from being ranked by Heritage Action, I think from number 10 to now, when they corrected that, we were tied for third in the country. One of the things that we really think needs to be looked at is we'd love to see better laws regarding residency. Not trying to stop anybody from being able to vote, that, obviously citizen, age, competency, that sort of thing. But we have such a society where people move between properties. You have a college student that goes to college in one state, whose mother lives in a different state, and the father lives in an entirely different state. And the car plates are here, but the insurance is here. How do we know which location an individual should vote at, to make sure they're not voting at all three? Or someone lives in multiple places in a state. How do we know this is the one that should be your mailing address? Or someone that in the springtime they're in Michigan, in the summertime they're in Missouri, in the wintertime they're in Florida. Well, really, you probably shouldn't be voting in all three of those jurisdictions every year in a cycle. So we'd really like to look at that. That would also help us to clean up our voter rolls, so that we can say, okay, this person should be registered there. Yes, they are, or no, they're not. That's a big one we'd look at. We'd also like to look. We have audits that are required in Missouri right now, but we really just have kind of a 5% audit. We'd also like to have that are required every election. I think we'd like to have statutory authority to have maybe randomly every election we grab 5, 10, I don't know, more races on ballots, and we do a deeper dive on them. And then maybe we should have some statute that says if that bleep happens, how do we do a real deep dive in something maybe we didn't expect to audit, but it looks funny even if it's fine. I think those are the two big areas. We're also looking to require more people to vote in person instead of voting absentee, even if that means they do in-person absentee. That way they can prove their identity. We know they're a physical person. And we passed a fun little aspect of our law last year where we can require vendors to come into our state and publicly disassemble their equipment, so that people can know what's really in that black box or silver box. We'd like to see other states do that, and we'd like to see us expand that so it's not just hardware, but it's also crowdsourced penetration testing and looking at the actual software so that people can have confidence.
I think you are definitely leading the way in that regard, and I think the absentee proposal, having in-person absentee voting, is huge, because back when I was in law school years ago, over a decade ago, I remember I took an election law class, and one of the things that was common was, hey, voter fraud's not huge. It's not widespread, but it happens. But the majority of voter fraud cases you hear about is through one thing, absentee voting.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I think anything you can do to actually monitor that's helpful. And I'll tell you, I even heard stories back in the day from people in small rural counties in Alabama running for election. Hey, such and such will help you win. Well, how's he going to help you win? Oh, he's got a stack of 500 absentee ballots over there. He'll fill out for you. That's how the frauds happen for years and years, because it's hard to prove. But nobody wants to eliminate absentee balloting, because we shouldn't, because there are certain people that can't get out and do things. Plus, also, hey, military.
We have to make sure we're military. One thing we did do, though, in our law I really liked last year was, it used to be they might send, I don't know, 50, 75, 100 absentee ballots to a big assisted living facility.
Yeah.
Now we mandate that the county clerk, the election authority, have a bipartisan team that goes to that facility, and we vote those people in person. We make sure that they are actually voting, that they are who they say they are, so that it's not someone else that's filling out their ballot for them.
Yeah, that's that actually is it's just like when we were talking about earlier about the classified materials and all, common sense solutions. They're huge.
You may have answered this, but let's make it even easier than that. Let's say I'm going to be out of state the day that the voting is going because I'm on business somewhere else. How do you handle that vote?
Currently, if you're going to be out of state on election day, You
Right.
can fill out a provisional, I'm sorry, not a provisional, you can do an absentee ballot. Right now, you can mail that in even if you're only gone the day of the election.
Right.
What I would like to look at for someone that's just going to be gone that day or that week, let's allow them that 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks before the election to go vote absentee in person. They
Got
have
it.
to have a reason why they're not going to be there, but then they vote in person. They show their government issued photo ID. We know they are who they say they are. They don't have to worry about the post office losing their ballot, or if there's something on the ballot the machine can't read. They fill out the ballot themselves. They run it through the equipment. If the equipment doesn't read it, it gives them a second chance. So it's better for the process and credibility. It's better for security, and it's better for making sure that that voter, their ballot counts and all their votes count.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I'll tell you, I kind of do get excited about hearing this, because when I was in law school, one of the people I got to hear speak at a conference at my law school was Fred Gray. And I don't know if you know who Fred Gray is. He was one of the ones that helped argue Gomillion v. Lightfoot. So
Okay.
no one wants to see any group disenfranchised. However, election integrity is very important.
And you can do both.
Yeah.
You can make sure there's accessibility. You can
Yeah.
make sure there's security, and you can make sure there's credibility. And if you don't do all three, you failed.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Well, we thank you so much for coming on. We thank you for your time.
Excellent.
Final question. If you can leave everyone with any kind of positive message that may be going through a struggle like you went through in your own life, with your son being born prematurely and all that, what would that message be?
God has plans for you, and he wants to do great things for you. And if you'll just look to him and trust in him, he can take care of everything. It may not be the way you expect, but he has great plans for you.
Perfect.
Amen. Well,
Amen.
thank you, brother. Appreciate it, Jay. We thank you so much for coming on, and we will email your team a message whenever this goes live.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thanks.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.
You too.